Should be all good now. Great stuff. Cool. So good morning, Wayne. How are you doing?
Good morning, James. Good to be here. Nice to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. So we were just talking just briefly. It was a busy weekend in Hull over the weekend with the, was it the Our City Festival? Is
Yeah,
that
it
what it
was
was called?
excellent. Yeah, it was our city. It was like an all-day thing, and they had like parades and things going around the city, and then it kind of culminated on the evening in Queen Victoria Square with like a live performance, which was like a narrative of Hull through the years. So there was like actors, and then it was interspersed with like the bands playing different songs related to that era. It was brilliant, really good vibe. Loads of people turned out. Very, all about togetherness and pride and all that. Yeah, great, fantastic event. Yeah.
Nice. So are you a Hull native, Wayne? Have you always lived in Hull, or are you from Hull, or what's your background?
I am. I'm Hull born and bred. I was born on the council estates of Hull, raised on Bransholme, then Orchard Park, and then later in West Hull, Hanleby Road, which is where my teen years were. So yeah, this is my city. It's kind of the city that made me. It's what is I call home. It's familiar. And I love it. I love the city. I love everything about it. I love the people. I love the togetherness. I love the tenacity of it. Hull people are, they're kind of hard headed. Well, we're two things really. One, we're very self-deprecating, so we don't really shout about ourselves and kind of push ourselves out there a lot.
Mm.
But two, we are we have a narrative of just saying, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. And it's that kind of pushing
Yeah.
forward, which I love. That's cool.
Yeah, you know what? It's amazing. So I'm originally from Essex, and I've lived in different places and ended up sort of living and working here in Hull. But it's amazing how the amount of people I've met since I've been here have a similar sort of background story to what you've just said. Perhaps brought up in East Hull or born in East Hull, and kind of, I guess maybe it's kind of shaped them to some extent to kind of give them a bit of like a drive or a direction that, if you were from the outside looking in, and lots of people still say this to me, like from the outside looking in, sort of say, oh, what do you want to be up there for? Like, what's going on up there? It's kind of nothing going on there. But actually, like you say, there's a completely different spirit to the place when you're actually here and living and working here. So yeah, it's great, but it's good to see that at the weekend. I didn't actually go, but I saw a lot of that stuff online about the festival and Collider Fest and all the sort of tech stuff that was going on.
Yeah, there is a real pride in. I mean, I suppose you could say this for any city, really. If you was to ask the people of the city or the town, they would advocate for it, I'm sure. Of course, typically the people that have a problem with, say, a city like Hull, typically the people that have never been here or spent any time here. And actually, the narrative generally of when people do come to the city is actually what a great city it is. It is actually very friendly. It is actually very together. And it has vast history, and a vast that threads that informs all the generations that have gone on, forever.
Yeah.
But it's also what it does is it creates resilience. There's no doubt we have a lot of poverty and inequality up here, particularly in the north of the country, I would say. But Hull is no exception. We're a post-industrial town, hard hit in the war. But what it has given us is resilience. People are quite hard-headed, as I said at the start. We're quite resilient, and whenever we get knocked down, we're pretty good at kind of getting up and just saying, well, let's have another crack at it then. And I think there's something powerful in that. And I think if you can tap into the next generations that are coming through, if you could tap into that resilience and actually match that with aspiration, actually people can do amazing things. But they've got to believe that it's possible. And, sometimes I think that's what's lacking a little bit in our sort of cities, the sense of opportunity, I think.
Yeah. It's an interesting point, isn't it? And just like kind of framing it in what I'm trying to do here really with this sort of Wthout podcast is just kind of trying to build the idea that, particularly for young men, but for all young people really, if you at a certain point in your, education, working life, whatever, as you're coming up, if you can develop that resilience, like you say, and if you can live without regret, without fear, without, prejudice and all these things, it does just open the world for you, opens your eyes to all the possibilities out there. And I think, like you say, it's sometimes living in a city like Hull, it's just about how much of the opportunity you can see versus whether the opportunity exists, because it definitely exists. It's just whether you see it and whether you can, take those opportunities. And
Sure,
I mean,
sure, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of what you do I mean, obviously we'll go into a proper sort of overview of what you do, but you do a lot of work with sort of businesses in terms of innovation and that side of things. And
Yeah.
do you see that a lot in those businesses?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, behind every business is a person, right? My whole philosophy on this is that when we talk about businesses or institutions or anything like that, they aren't things. They're made up brands and buildings and stuff like that. What actually sits behind them is the person or the people that make that
Yeah,
thing happen. So a CEO or a business leader or a sole trader or whatever, that's a person, and that person is shaped by their values, their upbringing, what music they listen to, their friends, whether they had good parents, how much money they had growing up, poverty, whatever. All those factors affect the way that they think, how resilient they are, how ambitious they are, where they see opportunity, how easily they're knocked down, all of those factors. So really my viewpoint on this stuff and my whole philosophy, and this is kind of developed as I've gotten older and gone through my own career and my own hurdles, is being able to help people to think differently about stuff. The reason I have the Shifting Views podcast is literally to shift views. It's to say, listen, couldn't we explore it in a different way? Are we thinking about this, from all angles? Can we shift the perspective? Because sometimes we can get a bit blinkered and we can be in our own, I always say there's a difference between sort of perception and perspective. And there's like one, how you perceive something, and that's informed by your own sort of reality. But if you can see a perspective from a different angle, actually you find that there is vast opportunities, and there are ways to do things, and not everything is as terrible as it seems. Um, and I kind of have this viewpoint that, and you can apply this in any context, but if you want to talk about businesses, I always see it as like a timeline. And I always say, like, this is kind of start of the timelines when you're born, end of the timelines when you die, essentially. And we don't know when that is, but if you're lucky, 80 years, let's say. And that's your sort. And in between that timeline is essentially a load of dots. And each
mm,
one of those dots is an event. It's the moment we're in at that point. And I sort of say to people, if you can kind of zoom out and see this line, this thing that you're in at the moment is just one of millions and millions of events that happen. And you never know where the next dot is going to connect. And even if this point is a really terrible point in your life, which we all face, it's likely going to inform the next step. And you can determine what that next step is. It's how you perceive that moment and how you use it. So even if it's a really terrible thing, it's something to experience, learn from, use, and push you forward, or you can let it consume you. And
yeah,
really, that comes down to a resilience piece. People, it's very easy to get caught up. And I think the problem we have in particularly in cities like Hull and the younger generation, but I would say across the country, frankly, the younger generation is that they're easily consumed by the dot that they're in. And that
yeah,
makes it really hard for them to see perspective and possibility in saying that this doesn't have to be your life. This doesn't have to be what defines you.
mm,
You're capable of so much more and could be so much more. But they need that message, and they need that message to be a positive message with realism, and the facts behind that, not a nonsense message, which we're seeing a lot of right now. And that's dangerous, I think.
yeah. I mean, it's a really good explanation of it, and I think, like you say, you can apply it to any point that you're at. So, like for me, someone who's moved, like geographies a lot, you can look at it and say, oh, a particular place where you're living at this time, you don't like it, or there's not much going on. But then you don't know, in 2 years' time, you could be in a completely different place and things that. But equally, finances, I think one of the big things for young people is, going to be affecting all of us, but particularly, the younger generation as they're coming up is, you might be in a particularly bad financial point at some stage of your life, but
Hmm.
doesn't mean that's going to last forever. And actually, as time goes on, from my own experience, finances fluctuate all the time because, you might be, doing well at one point, and then, another point, things look like, you might be running your own business, you might be trying to start a project up, and you're putting time and effort and money into something, and it's not necessarily returning instant rewards. And then you think, I'm going down the wrong, what have I done? Making a massive mistake. But actually, if you can see it through, like you say, the resilience piece, if you can ride it out, it fluctuates all the time. And even, but this is part of the problem, isn't it, with social media and the perception? The perception is that everybody's doing really well. everybody's doing well financially, relationship wise, job wise. They've got the house of their dreams, car of their dreams. But reality is that that's not the case. And I think it's just, especially as a young person, you're so influential to those, like you're so influenced by those things. And it can go one or two ways. If you see the right influence at the right time, you can kind of take off. You see the wrong influence at the wrong time, it can almost, like put you in this kind of a darker place that, it's really hard, like you say, even with resilience and even as with experience, to be able to sort of push through that is still really hard. So if you haven't got that experience and you haven't developed the resilience, it's even harder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely so. And one thing I try to do now as I've kind of gotten older in my years, and I've been through the ringer in lots of different ways, is I try to kind of be a mentor, but not a mentor in a sort of sense of like, hey, look at me, I'm great, you should follow my route. Because, I've been broke my whole life pretty much. I've grown up in poverty, and everything that I've ever done, I've had to just work my arse off to do, frankly, and you hit a lot of hurdles in doing that. But what I do is I try to bring that realism to the kind of the next generation. And I know several really good young entrepreneurs in the city who, are filled with aspiration and belief, and they want to do that. But what I like about them is that they're realistic in what they're trying to do. They're not trying to like do some random crypto thing or get rich quick or whatever nonsense that's out there, because it's nonsense. I just want to say this to people: it's nonsense. Don't believe it. It's far few. There may be one in a million. There might be somebody who struck it lucky and did something and made a load of money and whatever, but it's not real. What it is content creation, and that content creation is what funds their revenue. And people like you buying into it and like following their thing and downloading the course and whatever the thing is, it's not real. The people that are genuinely successful, and as a caveat to that, you've got to define what success is as well, and that's a separate issue. But if you want to look at the general sort of theory of success and money and wealth and all that kind of stuff, the people that are genuinely successful are not shouting about that on social media. They're not making videos. They're not doing that. They're out there living their life and making things happen, and it's a mindset thing that makes it happen. They're not promoting anything like that. It's just not true. Unless you're in the media age, and there are exceptions. There are very famous people that kind of make their living through that kind of world. But that's because their media, that their business is media. The average 18-year-old or something that's posting on TikTok and telling you how much money they make doing this, that, and the other, and how great their body is, and all that stuff. It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. Yeah. And so don't buy into that, because it's just not true.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite quotes, and I think originally it was attributed to Floyd Mayweather, the boxer, but I don't know whether, again, you don't know where these things have been spun, but basically the quote is, do your best work in the shadows. So the whole point is that do everything without, and it seems counter to what we do nowadays, but do everything without the camera on. And the thing is, like this, we're talking here on a camera, like it's being recorded and stuff. But in reality, this is not, our best work, is it? This is not the stuff that we're really putting sweat, time, effort, and the hard hours, the hard, graft into. That's something you necessarily, you would do that aside, you would do that without an audience. You don't want any thanks for it. You don't want any kind of praise for it. You would just work as hard as you can and really, do your hard work in the shadows. And the Floyd Mayweather thing, I think it was all about, originally he was like, when he was training for a fight, he was going out and running. He was doing his road running, but he was doing it in the middle of the night because he knew psychologically his opponent was in bed and he had the upper hand. So, it's, take it with a pinch of salt. But I still like the quote, do your best work in the shadows, because I think it goes against everything that we are kind of taught nowadays, because we're kind of taught, put everything on camera and show your entire life to anyone out there. But there's still a lot to be said for doing your best work in quiet. Aside, where nobody is necessarily seeing what you're doing, nobody's giving you a well done, but because of that, you're able to push through and really, do it without any of that external gratification and motivation.
There is a balance. I mean, I have to say there is a balance, because what I don't want to dismiss is that we are in a content age. We are absolutely in a content age, and the smart thing for you to do is to be absolutely making content of some form, whether that's podcasting or making videos or whatever it is you do, because we are in that attention age. Sadly, that is the nature of it. And you can leverage that and make create good opportunities, make good money,
Hmm.
create new business models and things like that. The digital age has allowed that to happen, and so younger entrepreneurs or younger people coming through recognize that because they're born into that age, and they recognized, hey, listen, I could do something with this. But I just want to caveat to say, majority of young people aren't doing that. So the few that you see, you might see thousands of young people on TikTok or Insta or whatever saying X, Y, and Z, but they are the minority. The majority of people aren't doing that. So there is opportunity in it, but my point to it is that it's got to be done authentic, and to go under to what you're saying, you can document stuff, that's because the age that we're in, but you still have to be doing the thing.
Yeah.
So what you're actually seeing is people documenting something, but actually the thing is them documenting it. They're not actually doing
Yeah.
the add value piece of work. So that and that's where the difference is. Essentially we're in that kind of influencer age. But you can't be an influencer if you haven't done anything, So it's a false narrative, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Create the thing, and the thing should be whatever basically adds value. This is what you should be saying. How am I adding value? Is there something that I can do, I can say, I can produce, I can deliver that actually solves a problem, that makes something better for the end person? If
Yeah.
you've got that, then the digital age is your golden egg, and you make a lot of content, and you promote that, and you do things with that. But it's adding value. It's not about self promotion. It's about solving somebody else's problem, and that's
Yeah.
sometimes those lines get blurred.
Yeah. So with the podcasting, obviously that's the other thing. Well, the way I came to kind of be aware of you and came to know of what you do and things is through the podcast. So, Shifting Views with Willis is the podcast I found that you're on. But I know you produce podcasts for other people as well and things like that. And
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things with that, did you find, or have you ever had that similar thought where you think to yourself, do you know what? There's like thousands of podcasts out there. Is there really any point in me going to the effort of doing this, or am I just becoming one of, adding to the noise, or can I do something different? I mean, how
Yeah.
have you have you sort of seen that, or have you handled that question yourself?
Yeah, every day. Yeah, absolutely. But again, I deliver a lot of podcast kind of training workshops, and as part of doing that, so for me, all businesses should be podcasting. I think it's a vast opportunity. The medium's massive. All the data shows which way it's going, and that's because we're in a era now where we want conversation. We're kind of skipping past the swiping zone, Instagram, TikTok, all those kind of things, and we're missing the engagement, the actual people speaking, going into deep analysis, explaining things. It's why, like, say, football punditry or something like that is still highly successful, and people watch Match of the Day because they want that kind of what's happening, the analysis, explain it. I want to learn more about it. I don't just want the quick soundbite of 20 seconds, which is attention, but that's not detail, and it doesn't answer the question or add the value. So, but in terms of the podcast thing, it goes back to my earlier point of sort of saying perception versus perspective. When I'm saying to people about podcasting, you can't think of it as a entertainment media age. Okay, I'm not trying to get you to be a Joe Rogan or a Stephen Bartlett or a Gary Vee, like have millions of followers and millions of views and blah, 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 all of that stuff. People mix up the two mediums. When you're doing a podcast from like a local level or a business level, you should be directing it to the very key, small niche audience that you want to add value to. That might be 200 people. It might be 50 people, it might be 5 people, or it might be 1,000 people. But it's essentially, particularly from a customer base, from a business point, it's your customer base. How are you adding value to them? Like, what's their problem? What's your expertise in that arena? What do you know about it? What do they take away from it? What do they gain from that conversation? There's no point in having 20,000 people tuning into your podcast from all over the world. They're not buying your product. They're not interested in your service. So it's great to have vanity metrics, but it does nothing for you. What you need is the metrics from the people that actually want to engage with you, and be able to show your authenticity, your trust. The whole thing with marketing and branding it's about trust. It's all about authenticity and trust. But also from a business development point of view, it's massive, and a sales point of view, because when you appear all the time, you become a familiar face. And I'm not talking about likes and shares here. Ignore metrics. That doesn't matter. People see you. people do watch and they do see you. And then when they meet you in person, immediately the barriers are down. So
Yeah.
most rooms that I go into when I go to an event or whatever, the first conversation that comes to me is like, I keep seeing you on LinkedIn. I keep seeing your pods. I keep seeing this. I keep seeing that. And it's immediately the first thing. And immediately that's a conversation opener. And immediately there's a rapport because they're like, it's like familiarity that, you're a
Yeah.
person, you're actively putting yourself out there, you're saying things, and people are saying, this guy must be okay because they're out there, advocating
Yeah.
and people are watching. So it's absolutely huge. So it's really about perspective. It's not about vanity. So is the podcast market saturated? Yes, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of podcasts, but does that mean there isn't a market for you to have a podcast? No, absolutely not, because you're
Mm.
speaking to your audience. You're not speaking to the globe.
Yeah.
And that has to be remembered. And finally, I would just say on this, when you are making a podcast, as a tip, you should be thinking about, people listen to podcasts like this, right? They put their earphones in and they're doing it when they're walking the dog, driving to work, mowing the lawn. It's in their most personal time that people consume. And they do it. It's a very personal thing to put a headphone in your ear and listen to someone's voice. And when you're recording this, I say to people, you're not speaking to hundreds or thousands. You're speaking to the
Mm.
one person. Think of it like that.
Yeah.
And like you would be having a conversation with them. How are you adding value to that person? It's all about
Yeah.
perspective. It's not about fame.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think that's often overlooked, isn't it? And again, it's probably because of influences that we're seeing ourselves and we're thinking, like you say, oh, we've got to be the next Rogan. And, or, but you don't for definite. And even like you say, even if it's like 100 listeners, and I think again, as with anything, any creative pursuit really, isn't it? And whether you call podcasting, vlogging, whether you call those true creative pursuits or not, I mean, it's a matter of opinion, but I think with any creative pursuit, you've always got that thing of, the barrier is, I don't want to look stupid, or I don't want to look like wrong about something. I don't want to say something that offends people, and I don't want to, I don't want people to not like me. Essentially, they're the things, aren't they? But if you can just like almost forget that and just say all that stuff is a bit of a given anyway, chances are someone's not going to like what I'm saying. Chances are someone's not going to agree with me. Chances are someone might think I look stupid, but that's fine. You're not appealing to those people, like you say. You're not trying to talk to those people. You're trying to talk to the people that are going to be respectful, interested, or tapped into whatever you're talking about. So
Yeah.
again, I think, and that goes for all of us, but especially probably younger people who are looking to start things themselves, but that barrier that we perhaps see with perspective and resilience, that barrier to them is like massive. Whereas to us, we're a bit more like, forget about that, or just crack
Yeah,
on.
well, I mean, I would firmly believe, I would say that podcasts and similar mediums like that, they should be in schools. I firmly believe this, because people being able to have a conversation, make an argument, look somebody in the eye, discuss, that kind of stuff, we're losing that. And because we're hidden behind a digital screen, and it's easy to type things out or whatever. But when you put someone in a position and you're looking at them like this and you're saying, okay, well, explain it to me, people just clamp up because they don't know how to communicate. Like, they can't remember how to have an actual bloody conversation, and this is
Yeah.
really, really important. And that all knocks onto confidence and onto resilience. The biggest thing I hear whenever people come to my workshops and things like that is like the fear of being behind a microphone, the fear of being on a camera, looking silly. I don't like the sound of my own voice. I think I look daft. People think I don't know what I'm talking about. It's the same old line that everybody says. You're not alone. You're amongst the
Yeah.
many. But actually, when you put people in that position and you actually have a conversation with them, I do it all the time, and they just flourish within 20
Yeah.
seconds. Because when you put humans and humans together and they have a conversation, forgetting about cameras and all that kind of stuff, humans are humans and they like to chat. And actually, we
Yeah.
have far more in common than we do that divides us, and that's really important.
Yeah, and I think it's great. Like, one of the things I love that I've seen that you've done online. Well, you did it in person, but I saw it online. Was the workshop where you had people just turn up, like 3 random people, sit together
Yeah.
and record like a podcast episode, or
Yeah.
record something together. And I just love the idea of that, even as a concept. Just to have three random people every episode turn up and talk about something completely that they've got no script and they no kind of direction. I mean, chances are you're going to get, and I don't know what those conversations were like, but chances are you're going to get something really interesting out of that. just from the sheer fact of, like you say, 3 people, 3 different experiences of life, of whatever it is, and just coming to it with a unique perspective on things. And
Yeah,
I just
they're
thought that
great.
was,
Yeah, they were great
brilliant.
pods. They were great pods. I tell you, they were great pods. And do you know why? It's because they found immediately what happens is they find commonality amongst them. So they're all from different backgrounds, different industries, whatever. And you think, why would a personal trainer be speaking to, I don't know, a freaking zoo manager or something, whatever it
Yeah,
is they do. But what happens is instantly they find commonality. So they sit down, they start talking, one subject will come up, and then they'll go, yeah, well, this happened to me and this related to me in this context. And then it's amazing. And that's because humans, we all have the same problem, right? And it goes back to your earlier point of, perception of what people see online and things like that. Most people are in the same position. If you're a business owner and you feel embarrassed about, like, you're not making a lot of money, or, you don't feel you're successful and this other guy's doing really well, and why aren't I doing that? It's reality is that isn't the case. Everyone's having the same anxiety. It's really bloody hard to run a business. It's really,
mm,
really hard. It's really hard to kind of get a good cash flow coming in, take care of your family, have security, all that kind of stuff. That's why most people don't do it. Again, going back to that minority point, majority of people don't run businesses because it's
yeah,
really hard to do. So if you are doing that, congratulate yourself, because you are in the minority. You are the few.
yeah,
And take solace in the fact that it's really, really hard. You're trying to push things forward. You're trying to learn on the go. There are no experts. You might be an expert in your arena of whatever the thing is you do, but actually in the concept of growing a business, it's forever changing, and we're
yeah.
always forever learning. So don't beat yourself up. Keep doing what you're doing and have faith in yourself. It's a powerful thing. The fact that you're doing it in the first place is mega.
Yeah, that's great advice. And equally, if you're at that point where you're just getting started, or you're not sure, you've got an idea and you're thinking, should I pursue? Should I do this? Should I not? Obviously, within reason, take a certain element of risk to do something. And that's the thing as well, isn't it? Like, I think people probably that start their own business are much more generally sort of open to risk, and like I said before, those points about looking silly or saying the wrong thing or whatever. If you're able to put that to one side, same thing with business. If you're able to put it to one side, those thoughts where, I might not succeed at this, or I might lose all my money, or, I might not make any money. If you can put all those things to one side, just even for momentarily, just long enough, you can kind of ride that wave, I think. And that's, again, the same point. And funny enough, in my, in professional life, I do come across a lot of people who, they're at that relatively early stage of a business. And these generally are older people, to be honest. They're like 40s, 50s. But they're at that point where they're almost like too self-conscious to talk about what they're doing or what their business idea is, because they don't want people to listen to them and go, oh, well, that's a silly idea. Or there's loads of people out there doing that. Why would you bother doing that? But actually that response, that's the easy thing to say, isn't it? That everyone can come up with a negative answer like that. But the hard thing to say is, oh, actually, yeah, I can see how you could make that work. That's a really good idea. Why don't you go for it? Why don't you, have you thought about trying this or speaking to this person? And again, to the point of what you said earlier about podcasting, sometimes it's just as much about your face being visible and people making that, literally that visual connection, as it is about anything else. And like you say, straight away that breaks down a bit of a barrier. And I mean, I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but I think the one of the big things that younger people, I keep saying younger people, but younger than us anyway, let's put it that way. I think one of the things they're going to face over like the coming sort of decade or so, it is going to be that question of, why would you bother doing that? There's a million people doing it already, or you can't do it as well as Joe Rogan, so why would you even start? And I think that if you can overcome that, I think you, like we're saying, you can achieve anything really. But and I think that's why I try to keep front of mind for myself as well. Whether it's in business or like this, doing a podcast or whatever sort of creative pursuit you want, you want
Yeah.
to kind of put your time to.
Sure. I mean, I would say, like, earlier on I was saying about your definition of success. And I think
Mm.
we really need to think this. And I started a new community recently. This is a shameless plug, but I'm sorry, I'm just going to throw this, which is called the Shift
No, no,
Lab. And
yeah, do, yeah,
the reason I started this community was because it's exactly to that point. There are, I call it a community for quote unquote curious professionals, but essentially it's people that want to self improve in whatever that means to them. And that might be in money, it might be in finance, it might be in career, it might be in their body. They want to look better, they want to feel better, they want to get better dates, whatever the thing is that makes them happy. But they need a space to be able to do that, where you have like-minded people around you that are also curious about doing something more. And you're not faced with like endless barriers of like, it's a silly idea, why would you do that, whatever. It's more, you're more faced with, well, yeah, of course that's absolutely possible, why not? Why couldn't we do that? Of course we could. Let's look, let's explore it, let's figure it out. And sometimes it's about who you surround yourself with, because, and when I started the group and people started joining it, and I've got members from every background, very professional, senior backgrounds you can imagine, and they were all, it was amazing because the people that were joining it were having the same thing. It was like, I needed a space where I could be heard, and I could, like, somebody could say to me, yes, we could do that. Why couldn't we do that? And that doesn't
yeah,
matter if you're 17 or 70. Like, there is no age barrier in this. If you're a 40-year-old now or a 50-year-old and you're rethinking your life and you're saying, my God, this is not my happiness, whatever, then you can change it. But you have to be realistic. And this is why the online world is a dangerous world, because what that does is it suggests quick wins. It's like, injection to the veins, do this and all this thing will happen. That isn't
mm,
life. What happens is you have to do things through small shifts, through one tiny step, one knocks onto the other. Earlier on, I was saying about the dot that connects to the dot. It's links in a chain. It sounds ridiculous, but that's how it happens. It's small movements,
yeah,
and pushing forward, and then accepting that there will be knockbacks. Your business will fail, probably. Something will go wrong. You'll lose money. This thing will happen. That thing will happen, whatever. That is resilience. That's part of it. And rather than seeing that resilience as, oh, well, it's just not worth it, see it as, okay, now's the point to pivot. I need to shift this
yeah,
way because it's going. It really, that is how things are done. It's just through grit and determination and learning and adding value. It's all about
yeah.
small shifts. It really is.
Yeah, and I've like I always think about when I always give this example as well. Like I've got true. This is a true story. I've got like boxes of T-shirts that I'd had printed up previously. I thought it was a great idea. These slogans, I thought, oh, these are going to fly. And this was before print on demand, so you couldn't just do it cheaply and easily. So I had to buy stock, and then I've ended up wherever I've moved these boxes with me, but they're like a constant reminder. They're like, this is a reminder that you did this thing, you tried
Yeah,
it, it
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
work. But at some point, you might be able to get rid of these T-shirts. I doubt it, but everyone's got that, I think, as well. And this might not be T-shirts, obviously, but everyone's got that relatable story, I think, to some extent, where
Of course they have.
you sort of, and again, even like we're talking about people like Rogan and stuff, but they're an easy reference point. But you look at Rogan, I mean, let's be honest, he's not the best stand-up comedian in the world. And if you look at his early stand-up comedy stuff, definitely is real, by no means would you look at that guy and think he's going to end up where he is today. So everyone's got that thing that didn't work, or perhaps they might even be a little bit like embarrassed by, or they might even think, oh God, I really wish I hadn't tried that idea. But that's, like you say, the little pinpoints in the journey, that thing has led to something else, that's led to something else that gets you where you eventually want to go, or where you're trying to go.
Yeah, I mean, you can't define success by someone else's standards. This is the mistake that people make. They watch things online and whatever, and they say that's successful. That body is the body. That amount of money is the amount of money. That business is the business. Whatever. That's not you. That's them. And like
Yeah,
and your definitions of success should be really what genuinely makes you happy, what makes you tick. I know that sounds a bit fluffy and BSy, but it's true. It's not. Like, you can't define, like, how much money do you actually need? How much money, what actually makes you smile in the morning? What is your
yeah,
ideal of a perfect week? And what does that cost, that perfect week? Probably nothing like what you expect.
Mm.
We've got to get perspective of these things. And, some of the stuff that's happening online, I do worry about the younger generation coming through, because there's a lot of influencers and saying some pretty vile stuff that
Mm.
is just not true. And what's worrying me is those people that are susceptible to that kind of messaging, particularly young men, they're
Mm.
susceptible to that messaging. That says to me that they don't have an external influence in their life that's
Yeah.
countering that.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
father figure, a coach, a brother, whatever. And I
Yeah.
think that's really, really important.
Yeah, and I think that leads on to I wanted to just mention that that Louis Theroux documentary that's doing the rounds at the moment, the Manosphere
Mm-hmm.
one, and I thought it was, I know you haven't seen it, but I thought it was really interesting in a sense that it brought, like he always does, like Louis Theroux, brings to light some of these people, shines a spotlight on some of the worst things, and also sometimes the best things, but some of the worst things that are going on out there. It didn't, for me, it didn't have the same kind of punch that his old documentaries had, where it would be a bit like a Westboro Baptist Church, where you're
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
you're genuinely shocked by what's going on. It wasn't quite like that. I think it was quite, for me, it was quite sort of believable, really, that these people are out there doing what they're doing, and these guys who are I guess, positioning themselves, like you say, in that mentor role, almost like an older brother figure, like a father figure. And I think this is why they are successful, why they're so popular online, is because actually some of what they say is accurate and is true. So some of it is completely untrue and ridiculous and diabolical. But equally, some of it is on the money, and it's stuff like, you want to have freedom financially, you want to have respect from people around you, your peers, and so from that side of things, they are right. But then there's a whole subtext to it that you perhaps, on the surface, you don't quite see until you dig deeper into what they're talking about. But
Sure.
and obviously, like the misogyny and stuff like that, and the sort of homophobia and all that side of things that they
Yeah.
promote is shocking, really. But yeah, just and the one final thing I say just on that point, one of them kept talking about, it was quite interesting. Louis Theroux was saying to him, "Why do you do this?" or "Why do you post this?" or "Why?" And he kept saying, "Oh, it's for clout. It's clout. That's what I use it for." So, and again, I think it's interesting how what he was to me, what that was saying is, it's almost like his proof that he uses in order to get more people through the door. So it's like,
Yeah.
this is the proof of what I'm telling you. So I'm showing you screenshots of how much I've made on crypto. That's the proof. And then I'm getting more people through the door with that proof. But, again, that's a model, isn't it? That it's not realistic. The realistic model of business today is that you're not going to show someone your balance sheet, because it has got ups and downs, and it has got inconsistencies or stuff that is not always, it's not always in the positive, it's sometimes in the negative. So again, I think particularly for young people, young men who those guys are appealing to, that is a skewed version of reality that they're seeing, and they're probably looking at that and thinking, oh, that's how I start a business today, that's how I start making money today. I go off and do crypto, or I go off and do all these extreme sort of things.
Sure.
But actually, you don't have to do that. You don't have to be extreme.
No, you don't have to be extreme. I mean, what I would say is as I was saying earlier on, there is opportunity in the digital world. There's no doubt. So, for example, I talk a lot about, say, like live shopping and things like that. Yeah, social commerce, which is vast. It is vast, and you can make good money doing that. You can, and digital products, you can make good money doing that. But I can tell you, it's a real grit. You have to put in. It's like it's having a job. Do you know what I mean? You have to put in the time. You have to go through the process. You have to not do well for a long time, and then suddenly you'll do well. You have to learn the craft of doing it. And it's like anything, whether you was podcasting or anything, any other output, it's a craft that you learn to do that through repetition and doing. And it's the same as any other skill. The danger is what these influencers, quote unquote, do is they suggest that all things are possible instantaneously if you just copy my thing, download my whatever, blah 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 blah, and that isn't true. And my earlier point was saying that successful people aren't showing their balance sheet. Like, people aren't making videos and saying, "This is how much money I made in 2026. Look, you could be like me." Successful people don't do that. Influencers who are portraying a picture of success are doing that. And it might well be that they have made some money, or it's come from whatever source that they've made that money, but it's not the realism of, and what they're doing. It's kind of like, not to get into politics, but it's like populism. So when you
Mm.
say that they're saying things that are true, yes, they're tapping into people's insecurities. They're tapping
Yeah.
into, they're skint. They're living in poverty. They've got no aspiration. They're not getting the girl. They haven't got the car. They haven't got the thing. Blah, 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 blah. And that's like a message in there saying, hey, but look at me. I can do that. And if you follow me, then you could do that. So they're tapping into a narrative, which is just a false narrative. And then what they do is it's like cold selling. You show proof points, which might be a skewed bank statement or a graph that shows this going up or whatever. It's all manipulation. It's utter manipulation. And, when you tap into somebody's pain point, you're essentially manipulating them and using their pain point to gain for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's morally wrong, but also to the messaging, as you spoke about, to sort of say what is a man, what it is to be masculine, to disrespect women. There's a whole thing with women and girls and violence. It's vile. It's absolutely vile, and it's not the realism of most young men. And I do worry that young men are getting a bad name. I do worry that there's a pressure on them to act and behave a certain way, and they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. And I worry about that world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, I think we spoke about this briefly before, but I think it's harder, and I don't want to make more of it than it is, but I think it's harder than ever now, probably, to be a decent young man in a way, whatever age really. But I do think it is harder than ever because there is so much expectation in all these different areas, and wherever that expectation is coming from, it doesn't really matter to some extent. It could be false expectation from social media, but it still exists. So the fact is that if you're a young person, young bloke, and you're seeing this stuff online, whether it's right or wrong doesn't really matter. You're seeing it, and it's part of your circle of influence, unfortunately. And this is where, again, it's the whole thing, isn't it, where we seem to have gone full circle back to physical strength equals strength. So or like equals strength of character. So again, there's this perception that if you are physically big and strong, you are emotionally strong, mentally strong, financially strong, everything. And actually, we all know that's not the case. I mean, if you look at the guy, I think it was the Netflix CEO or founder of Netflix, probably one of the most financially successful people on the planet at the moment. And you look at the guy, and you could walk past him in the street, you'd never know. It doesn't look anything like impressive physically. It doesn't look anything. He doesn't dress particularly impressive in any way. So these things are all they're all markers to appeal to that audience. And don't get me wrong, we've all been there. We've all been young men. Well, we've been young men and probably looked up to people and thought, "Oh, what an amazing suit that guy's wearing," or I wish I looked that good in those clothes, or I wish I spoke with that kind of confidence.
But we still do that now, James. I mean, like for me, like I actively go to the gym, I work out, I want to look better. I'm quite insecure about like how good I look, but it's all about, again, that perspective thing. I'm doing it for me, for what makes me feel good, what makes me feel confident, and a healthy body, a healthy mind. These are connected, these things, but it's all about the perspective of it. You can aspire to be wealthy or have more or look better or whatever. That's wonderful. And if you're putting in the thing and actually creating something of value that does that, that's great entrepreneurship. And making yourself feel better and look better, that's great. Look after yourself, that's wonderful. The difference is when you're using that by somebody else's standard. It's being manipulated to say, because you don't do this, because you don't do that, that's why you'll always be nothing. That's why you'll never be a man. That's why you'll never be successful. That's utter nonsense. That's utter nonsense. Self-improvement is the keys in the name. It's self-improvement, doing something that makes you feel better, that makes you feel like you want to push forward and do something. It's not to make you a more relevant man or a more relevant member of society or whatever. That is manipulation, and that's what's disgusting about what these people are doing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think, again, it's like tapping into the sort of gym bro culture as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
and like,
sure.
again, one of the things that always stuck with me, which I think it, again, is very true in some ways, and this is the problem with it. There's elements of truth in it, but I think it was one of the famous bodybuilders said that you only get into bodybuilding as a man. You only get into bodybuilding if you are trying to get a woman, or if you're trying to get back at a woman. And it's like those are the only two motivations, and it's like, well, if you're, I mean, like we say,
Oh,
like
dear.
we were talking about this toxic masculinity thing. This is a bit of an
Yeah,
overused term at the moment, but
yeah,
there's toxic behaviors, isn't there? Like you'd said before, like
yeah, yeah,
whether you're whatever gender you are, but
yeah.
the fact that someone very notable has said something like that, and I don't think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, but he's got a lot of strange quotes as well. But
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, this whole idea, and I do think if you went into most gyms, particularly the sort of muscle gym, the strength orientated gyms, probably if you did ask most of the blokes in there, particularly younger blokes, I imagine their answer probably would be along those lines. I've either been hurt by a woman, so this is my sort of way of proving that I'm something, or I'm trying to attract a woman who I'm, that I'm attracted to. So again, like you say, if we came back a step and just said, right, am I actually doing this for the right reasons? Am I doing this to feel healthier, live longer, sort of improve my everyday life? That's one thing. But then are there these other motivations? And again,
Of
not to say
course.
that's right or wrong, but maybe those are the motivations for a lot of
But I
people as
mean,
well.
like vanity exists, right? So it's not to dismiss vanity. We all want to look, attractive and better and appeal to the, whoever it is that we want to appeal to. There's nothing wrong with. I think that's totally fine. That's human. We've done that since the beginning of time. That happens across the whole animal kingdom. They do things to attract their mate or whatever. And in human sense, that's like looking good. And yes, the influence is. What is a definition of a good-looking, in-shape man and a definition of a good-looking, in-shape woman? And that's been fueled by society over the years. And what happens is that supersedes who they are as a person sometimes, because instinctively as humans, we're attracted to the physical. If you see someone with a six-pack and big biceps and stuff, then immediately that's a draw. So I understand why young men or any men of any age would want to sort of improve that. But fundamentally, that comes down to, it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, isn't it? We want to feel secure. We want to feel safe. We want to feel like protected. We want self-actualization. We want to feel that's the human. And I think that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And we're all doing that every day. What I'm saying is that when we try to manipulate that situation for our personal gain at the expense of the confidence of the person that you're manipulating, and that worries me a bit, because boys cry too. Boys have, and men cry too. And they have, you never know what's going on behind the scenes. We're all personas. We all walk around with this persona and look nice and confident, and we present a certain way. I do it myself. I'm always on screen. It's like a persona. It's not fake. It's just, it's a persona, it's elevated. But like behind the scenes, like the most, the people that stand out as being the most like, blokey, manly, hard, whatever you want to call it, actually are usually traumatized. They're usually people that are having that quiet moment that you would never guess in a million years. And I think we have to recognize that, that people are having to kind of disguise their very vulnerable selves in order to be presented to the world and, get the thing they want, attract the mate, whatever it is they're trying to do. And I just think we need to get that balance. It doesn't mean you're a wussy or whatever. It makes you a human. That's what humans do. And it's like we're removing the human bit out of people, and that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I think that's it's so hard, isn't it? Because even like I'm nearly 40, and even now, if I'm honest, do I want to tell someone all my faults, or the things that I'm not good at, or the things I'm worried about or self-conscious about? No, absolutely not. I'd rather keep all that to myself. But and I think especially as let's say 14, 15, 16-year-old, young man, there's absolutely no way you're going to want to disclose that sort of stuff. But actually, if you're able to, you're perhaps able to then, have a level of emotional intelligence that it's, doesn't just create the connections with people like a girlfriend or a partner or whatever, but also when you then go out into the working world and things, that emotional intelligence, you are almost beyond your years in terms of what you're able to, do in the workplace as well. And I think that really helps. But yeah, it's interesting, like you said about the fitness and stuff. How do you feel that like health and fitness has impacted your sort of everyday, well, like your everyday life, but your ability to sort of work in the business and things? And
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly powerful. It is powerful. I started like properly going to, I'm not some big guy, obviously, I do it for myself, but I started properly going to the gym. I would say during the lockdown, and I think a lot of people did this during the COVID time because, they had time on their hands, and there's only so much time you can sit on the sofa and eat Doritos or whatever. You recognize things in yourself. I think that was a pivotal period. But yeah, I started sort of working out properly during that time, and then it kind of merged on from like home workouts to actually go into a gym, and that becoming part of my lifestyle. And I've been doing that for a few years now, and I have to say I absolutely love it. One, physically, yes. If you want to talk about just from a medical side, as we get older, we are living longer lives. And the biggest thing we could do to have a good life is a little bit of resistance training, being able to move, being able to keep the body active, keep the heart working, all of that stuff. Any science will tell you that. So, if you don't want to be that old crippled person at 70 that can't walk around properly and stuff like that, which is awful to see, you've got to move your body. You have to move, and you haven't got to be a bodybuilder. Just some basic resistance training, very light. So I do that as partly a part of the health thing, but two, partly it's a vanity thing. I want to look better. I want to, when I go to Spain or I want to go on the beach and that, I want to, I want to feel good. I want to feel confident.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
that's absolutely fine. And three, it's a mental thing. It really is. It's sometimes so hard. Really is to go to the gym. Sometimes it's like you really don't want to do it, and it's very easy not to do it. It's very easy not to do it. But I tell you what, every single time I go, I've never regretted it. Every time I walk out that building, I go, I'm so glad I did that. It really is very powerful mentally for your endorphins. It releases a lot of positive energy, and it really is a test of resilience. And linking it into kind of business, there is a discipline in running a business, and there's a discipline in going to the gym, and there's a resilience in it. You've got to push. You've got to really put yourself out there, and you've got to look silly. You've got to pull the wrong machine and put too much weight on and stuff like. You've got to do these things because this is how you learn. It's exactly the same in business. You've got to get it wrong. You've got to sell the wrong product. You've got to lose the customer. You've got to look silly on a podcast, because that is the nature of growing and learning. That is the nature 100%. Of it. It's the same thing.
I think we've all been crushed by a barbell at some point when we've put too much.
A few times.
I definitely have a couple of times. But
don't ego lift. Let me stress this: do not ego lift, because it's not worth it. It's so stupid. Lightweight, get the form right, and progressively overload over time. Don't ego. It just makes no sense. But if you want to make the analogy to business, it's exactly the same. Don't present to be something that you're not. I've done it lots of times over the years, and it ties into all the stuff we said about the online thing. The reason people think that they're less than in their business is because they think everybody else is doing so much better. By and large, they're not. They're in exactly the same position. They're trying to get customers. They're trying to get cash flow. They're worried about the money coming in. They're worried that they're not selling. They're worried about how they appear. They're awkward at a networking event. They're worried about meeting people. Everyone's the same. Everyone is the same. And they've all got but nobody says it, because we're all presenting ourselves as like, hey, I'm doing just fine. If people were really open and honest, you'd find that isn't the case. And I think to your point earlier on, you were saying about being a young lad and being worried about opening up about emotions and things like that. It's not necessarily that they need to do that. They just need to feel that they're in an environment where it's okay to feel a certain way. You haven't got, not everyone has to go to a therapist. Do you know what I mean? It's just that, you need to feel like it's okay to feel sensitive. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel embarrassed. It's okay to recognize that, you think somebody looks better or feels better or whatever. That is human nature. What we shouldn't be doing, though, is punishing people to make them think like, well, because you feel like that or because of whatever, you're nobody. You can't possibly be anything. That's nonsense.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right with the point about therapy as well. Like, because I've done a bit of therapy over time where it's been really helpful. Don't get me wrong, and it's helped me to be able to open up and talk, expansively about things. Like you say, similar like a podcast, you get to talk on a topic for ages and, well, for an hour or whatever it is. But I do think, like you say, you don't necessarily need to do that. If you create a space where, even if it's amongst friends or if it's your partner or your family, if you've got that space that you can be honest and open, and someone can say to you, like, you seem a bit off, what's wrong? And if you feel confident that you can tell them the honest answer, really, that's, for me anyway, that's what the therapy was. There wasn't anything more sort of, what's the word, like, scientific than that about it. But again, it's hard, isn't it? Because where do you find those sort of spaces, I suppose, in everyday life?
It's really bloody hard. I've done a lot of therapy over my years. I don't mind saying that. And I have no shame in that. I've struggled a lot. I've been through a lot of traumas in my childhood, and that's kind of made me who I am today to some extent. And I think you could go down two routes, frankly, especially if you come from a city like Hull, from poverty, because, what happens to you can influence different directions. Some people go down a really bad route. Maybe they get into drugs or alcohol or something, like some kind of thing to suppress, and that leads to all sorts of problems. And some people overcome and lucky, and they find an outlet. For me, my outlet was music. That's how I found my outlet about 16. And fortunately, that led me to a group of friends who I'm still friends with today. I've traveled all over the world. I've played on stages all over the world, and I've had pretty good experiences through music. But all of that's really by accident, by sheer discovery, and that probably saved my life, I would say. But some people don't find that. They don't find that thing, and they don't have that outlet, and they don't have the person to speak to. And I mean, I would say from a therapy point of view, speaking to a counselor or something, it is, from my perspective, it's vastly a great outlet. It's something that people should do. The challenge, though, you're right, is it's almost bloody impossible, because most people don't have the money to do it privately.
Yeah.
And it is expensive. And to get it on, like, the NHS or something like that, you're talking the queues, even to get on the list to do something like that is impossible. And that what that does is it creates a system where people feel like, that's just not, it's out of my reach. That's just totally impossible. So they make do. And they turn to whatever the first thing is that influences. And that's why people who are doing this manosphere stuff and things like that are so effective, because it's very easy to tap into an insecurity like that.
Yeah, and I think actually that's is one element where I know AI has got lots of benefits and downsides, and we won't get into the whole AI thing because that's another sort of podcast on its own. But I do think if you're in that situation where, let's say like it's 2 a.m, you can't sleep, this thing's on your mind, there's no one at that point for you to turn to, and even your partner or whatever. If you can turn to some AI platform, I'm not saying any of them in particular, but if you can turn to that and it can give you some kind of short-term reassurance, maybe there's a positive there. And I know like Mark Manson has recently been pushing this app. So Mark Manson, like his series of books like about self-help and stuff, but obviously delivers it in a very no-nonsense way. But his app at the moment is designed around that. Basically, he's like a pocket therapist. That's how he's kind of selling it. Now, again, whether you can realistically roll that out, large scale, I don't know. But it's an interesting way that we could go with it, I think.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I mean, I think, I work in innovation. My job is to help people, embrace technology and think differently about how we do things. And of course, there's massive opportunity in AI and in bots and in chatbots and things like that. If used in the correct context, it can be used as a tool to aid. It's not a replacement. It's not human, right? And it doesn't understand the context of the words. People must remember this with AI. It doesn't understand the context of what you're saying. It's piecing together words that naturally follow each other based on what it is you're prompting it. But use it as an aid, but don't use it as like gospel, because it's not. It's a machine. But it is helpful to kind of give you a guide or a starting point. But my advice to people in this situation is, that whole thing of anxiety or worry or stress, firstly affects everybody. And anyone who tells you it doesn't is lying. It does.
Mm.
And secondly, it's okay to be stressed. Most people have some form of stress. That's part of being human, and that's good for us. It's when the stress is overwhelming that we can't regulate it. That's the problem. But I always say to people, and it's something I learned from therapy, which is you have to embrace it. It sounds like an oxymoron, but you have to actually accept the anxiety. So in that moment, in that very moment, and anxiety can be very physical as well. It can like be almost painful because it's a very physical, visceral reaction. But in the moment that you're having that thing, you have to embrace it. You have to say immediately, okay, I feel like this now. This is how I feel. What's happening? What's making me feel like that? Like literally write it on a piece of paper, write it in a chat bot, whatever you're using, but write it.
Mm-hmm.
What's happening? What's making me feel like? And be honest. Don't disguise it. Don't try and tell yourself something different. Be blatantly honest. What's happening? Okay, why is this happening? Why is this making me anxious? And as soon as you accept the situation, you then actually physically start working through how to overcome it. The reason people suffer so much from it, actually, from an anxiety point or stress point of view, is because they try to resist it. So they try to ignore it, they try to bury it, they try to distract themselves, and that's not dealing with a problem. And it's really important that you do that, and you find that actually that really changes your perspective on how you do things. That's how I've learned to cope with it. I accept the situation and then challenge it and go, okay, so what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
I think, that's a great bit of advice, and probably, probably not going to be a better place to kind of wrap it up there today, really. I think to end it is kind of a great little conclusion there. So thanks very much for that, Wayne. Was just finally, is there anywhere that you would recommend people find you, or is it the Shift Lab, or where can people find you online?
Yeah, I mean, probably your best thing is to reach out to me on LinkedIn more than anything, because everything I do is kind of runs through that and all the links to the things I do are in my bio. So it's probably easiest to do that thing. But obviously I'm from a podcast world. I run a podcast. If you want to speak to me about podcasts, I do that. I run an innovation consultancy. So if you're a business owner and you want to think differently and think how to push forward, that's what I do. And then I run a community called the Shift Lab, which is for people that want to do self-improvement. And all of the links and stuff are in the bio. So just find me on LinkedIn, Wayne Willis, and you'll find everything.
Yeah, brilliant. Great stuff. Cheers for that, Wayne. And I've really enjoyed that conversation, and obviously picking up, learning more about you as well, because, some stuff there that obviously I didn't know as well. So, but really great. And I appreciate you, talking openly as well. And I think, like I say, to bring it back to what I'm trying to do with this sort of Wthout brand is really try to create some of these, I don't want to say better, but create some role models or people that young men can look to in all areas of life, whether it's business or relationships or finances, whatever, and just look at them and say, okay, this is someone that, their story's real. They're telling me stuff that's realistic, and I can do what they're doing. I can see them as a guide, that, and I think you absolutely fit that bill.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, James. And congratulations on the podcast as well, because it really does take something to start something up, especially when you're talking about something quite raw and honest. And you are tapping into an issue, and as we've discussed in the last hour, there are things that you need that counter argument. Do you know what I mean? You need that. You need somebody to say who's from that world, who's been through stuff and done things, and is able to offer some form of kind of mentorship, kind of advice, guidance. I think people need that. I wish I had that. I really do. And I think people need that. So, I mean, congratulations on doing this, and I wish you every success for it. And I hope we can talk again, because there's 1,000 things we could go over, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I'd love it sometime. So, yeah. All right, Wayne, thanks a lot. And take it easy.
All right, man. Take care.
Cheers, mate.